We can talk about Illinois wills and trusts, of course. Also dynasty trusts. Is anybody interested in learning anything about dynasty trusts? Frank? So I'll tell you one thing that you'll want to know. The best state to open a dynasty trust would be in South Dakota. You do not have to go to South Dakota. You don't have to live in South Dakota. In Illinois, trusts have a lifespan, 90 years. If you want to have a dynasty trust where maybe you have a whole kit and caboodle of money and you want it to go on for generations, generations, and generations, then you want to open up a South Dakota dynasty trust. Again, not legal advice. Nevada dynasty trusts are pretty good. South Dakota is just a smidge better. So South Dakota is the winner. And actually Delaware, a lot of people think Delaware is way down the list about number 10. So if you're gonna choose any jurisdiction, you're gonna want to choose South Dakota. So in South Dakota, they have what's referred to as perpetuity. The dynasty trust in South Dakota never dies. So because it never dies, it never triggers the estate taxes. It's kind of a long story we won't get too deep into. We'll talk about the Illinois estate tax. Illinois has an estate tax that has a threshold, not an exclusion. So Illinois has a threshold where if whether you're a single or a couple, if you go 1 penny over $4 million on your net worth when you pass, it's going to trigger the Illinois estate tax back to $1. So that's something else. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. A way to avoid that is you could establish a Tucker Shelter Trust. I'm not an attorney, but we work with the attorneys to draft those. I can give you information. We can give you information about that, but we cannot draft the trust ourselves. So we can work with your attorney or with ours. Ours tend to be a little bit more on the ball with what we're talking about. We can talk about qualified terminable interest property. That can be a way to provide, if you're in a second marriage, you're probably going to want to consider a qualified terminable interest property. Also, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act of 2025 was signed into law on July 4th. That permanently extends the Trump tax cuts or permanently until they're repealed. They might be repealed as soon as 2029 if things go differently in the elections. That can affect you no matter which way no matter what political opinions that you have or which way you vote. The Trump tax cuts do benefit folks who are relying on IRAs or Social Security or both. So the fact that we have a $38 trillion federal debt and that we could have dramatically higher federal income taxes as soon as 2029 would be something we want to talk about tonight. The Social Security Fairness Act of 2025 was signed into law by President Biden on January 5th. If you or your spouse has a pension, then we might want to talk about, if you haven't already figured this out, how you might get quite a bit more money from Social Security. We've had some folks get, I think one couple, your mileage may vary, but we had a couple that are longtime clients, and he has a city pension, City of Chicago, and then she had her private sector employment, and they just were able to increase their monthly income by $1,500 a month due to the Social Security Fairness Act of 2025. And like I said, that was signed on January 5th by President Biden.